All right. Thank you, and good morning, everyone. So we're going to hop back on that AI train, but with a little bit of a different message, right? So we've been talking about, we saw a lot of the awesome features that Propel has to offer with agentic AI and everything they're building into their overall ecosystem. But for many of you, you work in these regulated environments. So what does it actually mean to use AI in these regulated industries? And so today we're going to talk a little bit more specifically with the life sciences lean, hopefully it applies to most of you here, about where is the regulatory landscape moving towards and how do we incorporate AI into our operations. So again, my name is Zachary Macht. I'm a director in our KPMG Life Sciences Advisory practice, and my focus, as mentioned, is really around navigating that intersection between technology, compliance, and quality. And I'm excited to share with you guys a little bit of our insights that we've learned here today, and especially, that many of you in this room are on that forefront of your digital transformation journey and looking to use some of these AI use cases. How could you use some practical applications to make sure you're doing it in a compliant manner? So to kick us off, we're going to start with something that hopefully maybe some of you, but if not, go take a look, have seen, which is the FDA's first warning letter that explicitly calls out artificial intelligence. I see some head nodding in the audience. Yep, we've seen it. Great. I think that this is a really powerful message and a real-world example that we really need to take into consideration, which is very tangible to what we've been talking about here today, and as you bring back to your organizations, how you use AI going forward. So this was the first FDA warning letter, and what it calls out explicitly is my mistake. So what it explicitly calls out is the misuse of artificial intelligence. And so in this case, the organization that was flagged here, they were generating these critical GXP documents, which many of you are doing in your source of truth Propel solution today. Specifications, procedures, production controls, all those records, et cetera. And the issue wasn't that they were using AI, right? The agency is using AI. We're all trying to use AI. We're all on this hype train. But what was not okay was the over-reliance of the use of the artificial intelligence in their compliance-related processes. And what the firm failed to do in this case, and as the warning letter even states, is that they weren't even aware of the legal requirements and said the AI agent never told them it was even required. Fun. So take this as a good lesson learned and apply it to your businesses, your organizations, as you're thinking about how to embed these technologies moving forward. And really when you think about it, for Propel, if you're going and implementing the QMS solution, right? If you're handling complaints or managing a CAPA, it's not that we want to delegate all of our compliance-related activities to the algorithms, to the artificial intelligence. We need to make sure that we're incorporating the people with a thought around how it is not just a stamp of approval, but that they're actually, with intent, bringing oversight to the process. And now we have clear precedents from this warning letter to do so. So from there, right, the warning letter is just the beginning. We're going to keep seeing this, and you're likely going to start seeing some of your inspectors, auditors, folks that are coming in to investigate your businesses, and they're going to ask some new questions, right? They're going to ask you things around how do you manage your ongoing performance? So how do you know that your AI is still working as intended 6 months after you launched it? Unexpected behaviors, right? We talked a little bit about model drift or hallucinations, right? So what's the process that you're going to apply to make sure that these unexpected or unusual recommendations are actually addressed? And who ultimately intervenes and makes the call? Change management. We all do changes, right? You're pushing out new software versions of your Propel platform. You're managing everything in your validated life cycles. But how do you make sure that the data that's being used and being tested and performed against is actually maintained in a traceable way, right? When that artificial intelligence, that agent bot is out there working on your behalf. And the governance, right? So who's ultimately accountable for the decision that was influenced by the AI? So these regulatory agencies are going to continue to ask these questions. They're getting smarter. I think Ross even mentioned in his opening statement that, they are very aware and astutely knowledgeable about artificial intelligence. And so these questions will continue to come into your regulated industries, and specifically from an FDA perspective, they're going to ask these questions during your inspections and audits. You need to have the answers for how you're managing the controls. So it's not just about how, applying proactive governance as a good idea. It's just mandatory at this point. So how? Right? I think we've been on this continuous journey for the last few years around migrating from a traditional CSV model to CSA, or continuous assurance. And so with these AI systems, the fact that they have the ability to learn and evolve, it makes it a little bit more complicated if you continue to apply a traditional validation methodology, right? CSV was perfect when you had something that was static. But when you have something that's continuously evolving, you need to have a continuous evolution mindset, that continuous assurance to say that what I intended the system to do is actually performing as intended over and over again. And so with AI not being deterministic, we need to shift the thinking around that static to life cycle, validating the system and governing the data within the model as much as possible so it's working off of the right information, and thinking critically about the quality function not being the solely responsible group for making sure that you're maintaining your compliance stature. It needs to be a multidisciplinary function with all of your partners involved, because everybody, as we said earlier, everybody owns the data, right? So the data informs the model. You need to make sure that it's actually maintained in a compliant manner. So then the next big thing that comes up when we're speaking with our clients, when I've been speaking with some of you over the last day or so, is, well, we're okay. We'll just have the human in the loop. But is the human in the loop doing everything you need it to do? There are inherent risks involved with those humans doing that consistent check on that data that's coming out every single time. And the human presence alone, as we saw with that warning letter, isn't enough, right? If you're just stamping it and moving it on, is that good enough? Is the agency going to accept it? Likely not. So how do you ensure that you have controls in place within your human in the loop, right? The human reviewer needs to be this competent person that understands what they're looking at, has an independent viewpoint from what your AI use case produced on your behalf, and then they're actually adding value within the process to make sure that the output was, in fact, what it was intended to be, with some level of traceability back to the evidence of how that AI solution came up with its proposal. So just relying on the human reviewer is going to present some challenges, right? They're going to have some fatigue. There's going to be inconsistencies in different people providing those different reviews within the same process with the same outputs coming from these use cases. And inherently, we're going to find that over time, humans are going to find themselves just trusting what the AI has to offer and not continuously dive in and check it and make sure, because they're going to feel confident that what it's producing is right. But we can't fall into these traps. We have to continue to think about, if I was in Propel and we're running a quality workflow, and the AI came back and suggested to you that the root cause for your complaint was going to be X, Y, and Z. And then your quality professional came in and said, okay, yes, approved. Is that going to be good enough? And the answer is going to be no. We need to have substantive oversight of what the model is producing and making sure that we are applying our human oversight as a human in command, right? So, where do we go from here? How are we moving forward? And we're going to talk a lot more about this in the panel coming up. But we've had lots of conversations with clients who talk about and feel this skepticism about adopting AI too fast, right? Because they know, we all know in this room, that we're working in these regulated environments and it's hard, right? How do you balance innovation with making sure that you're maintaining your compliance stature? So the first thing in my mind is we need to acknowledge what's happening. And the AI train is running. The adoption is cruising at a pace that we haven't really seen before. And the problem is not something that's in the future anymore. The problem is right now. Everyone, it's happening to us. It's happening within your own companies. It's happening with your competitors. And if you're not applying some sort of AI into your business models, you're maybe even getting left behind. With that, we also have a shifting regulatory landscape, right? All of these codified rules for how we manage the artificial intelligence aren't solidified yet. So we have to be practical and think about what can we rely on as the legacy and established GXP principles relating to risk management and our good documentation practices and maintaining good audit trails and traceability in order to apply those concepts in the way that we are validating what these artificial intelligence helpers are doing on our behalf within these systems. And then finally, shifting that mindset to a proactive risk management and risk mitigation approach, right? Demanding that we have the transparency from the artificial intelligence systems so that we can enable our human in the loop, human in command, to actually be successful and equipped with the data to make the informed decisions so that we don't come back to those inspectors and have those audit findings. This mindset shift is not just the simple checkbox. It is thinking holistically as a continuous assurance framework and making sure that we answer the question of how do we continuously assure the AI is performing as intended and have the right oversight from our people to support the technology that's enabling us day to day. So with that, thank you all. The journey with AI in these regulated industries is super complex. And I don't think anybody can stand here with a straight face and tell you that they have all the answers. But it presents a really amazing opportunity where you have to find that balance between innovation and a risk profile that's suitable for your own organizations, but we have to keep innovating, right? That's where the world is going. That's where the technology is leading us to. That's what companies like Propel that you guys have invested in are enabling you all with the tools to help you do this. But we just need to be able to think about how we constructively control it within our organizations. So thank you very much for your time. And we're going to move into a panel here and talk a little bit more.